Jordan, I see your hand up. What, when, question, thought?
I have a question about insurance renewals. So we had a meeting with our insurance company and all of our policies like skyrocketed, and we use a broker, so they kind of search around for us. And even like best case scenario through like 3 or 4 options. I mean, our building insurance doubled with an exclusion for anything cosmetic, which I feel like is a major exclusion from a insurance policy. It went from $5,000 to about 11, almost $12,000 a year. So more than doubled.
Oh.
Our general liability went up, our workman's comp went up, all of our vehicle insurance went up. I was wondering if anybody else experienced that this year, and you know, what, if anything, they've done to mitigate those costs, or if there is any way other than just raising your price on your services.
Yeah. Great question.
Anybody advice on insurance? Yeah. Daniel, I saw your hand up. I don't know if you have advice on insurance or a separate question. If anybody has had this experience with insurance, how have you navigated it? Would love to hear.
We went out and got multiple insurance companies to requote our insurance. We had to go through 3 insurance companies to get a new commercial auto policy. And we're getting ready to do that on our workers' comp also. But for the first time in 5 years, we raised our per hour labor rate by $5 an hour too. So to help offset a little bit of those costs.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I do expect generally for most people, your costs will increase between 2026 or 2025 and 2026 because there are a couple government subsidies that went away over this last year. And that's going to cause that change. And what Scott just said there is important to account and price for that difference. And that's just going to be a fact of the matter for this year. That's not the only reason costs are increasing, but there's a pretty significant chunk of a general insurance price increase due to some of those changes between these last year and this year. So it's something to expect really for everyone in this coming year.
Scott, what do you mean when you said you increased your general labor rate for $5?
Scott.
Yes.
You did.
Scott, what did you mean when you said you increased your general labor rate for $5?
Looks like he's got somebody talking to him on the phone.
My partner is calling me on the phone here, so hold on. What did you ask? I missed it really quick.
You said you increased your general labor rate $5. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, we bill. We do cost plus. So basically, you know what Redmond system is, and we were billing $85 an hour, and we raised our rate on our general labor from 85 to 90. And then we went from our specialty labor from 100 an hour to 105 an hour. So our specialty labor is electrical, plumbing, those type of things. And so we just raised it, and you know, now our estimates are billed at $5 an hour, but it's not like it's glaring in somebody's face because it's part of the overall estimate.
So that wasn't something that wasn't something you submitted to like insurance. That was just on your end to increase revenue.
That was our end in order to cover some of the increased cost of operation. I did give all of our techs or our guys $2 an hour raise though, also to try to help, because I mean I know their expenses are going up also.
Does anybody have any other insurance advice? Or my biggest advice is always to shop around. If you've been with the same broker for a long time, and if they haven't checked, I would have them check. If you feel like they are not doing a great job or kind of pushing you off, I would go somewhere else. And so that's always, you know, get 3 or 4 different quotes. Don't just go with one.
Nicole, was this a question about workers' comp insurance?
It was just, we had our insurance renewal meeting and we just got like across the board, everything skyrocketed. Workman's comp, general liability, our building insurance, the vehicle insurance. I mean, the biggest was our building insurance, more than doubled. I mean, we're paying over $1,000 a month in insurance for our building. And there were massive exclusions from the policies too. Those were out of 4 options that we had. And then they cautioned us, they said, if we switch your building insurance, because of the roof, you might have a hard time getting anybody to insure it, period. So,
Okay. You're an electrical contractor?
yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm basically trying to find advice, if anybody else has experienced that 2024 to 2025 and, what they've
You're
done.
definitely not the only client complaining to me right now about insurance. That's for certain. So if you're
Yeah.
feeling like, hey, are they picking on me? They're not. I think insurance just tends to go up every year. I don't know if this year is more than others, but you're definitely not the only client that right now is like, geez, Louise, this is
Yeah, a lot
spiking.
of insurance companies right now are reducing exposure and getting out of businesses, and it's making the market much more competitive, and it's causing prices across the board to go up. I see AZ Renovation. I guess that's Scott. We have a general contracting business as well, and workers' comp. We've always been with Builders Mutual. We've always found the best prices through Builders Mutual. I don't know if that's who Scott uses or not, but. And I don't think that would qualify for an electrician, but as a GC builder being part of the HBA, workers' comp's handled through the National Association of Home Builders and is about the best deal out there.
Yeah.
We actually have 3 different insurance companies now. At one time, I was all with one carrier, but because of what you're talking about, Jordan, I ended up having to go find better pricing. So now we have 3 different carriers.
Yeah. I left that meeting on Friday. I was like, well, my day's over. I gotta go home and puke. I don't know. It wasn't, I mean, it was like tens of thousands of dollars that I'm looking at spending as additional in insurance. And there's nothing that's changed. I mean,
it's
like
their business that's changed.
Yeah, it's not like there were major claims or anything like that. It's just
their business model has changed and they're reducing exposure, and that's why. And I would get in the habit of shopping every year for all of your insurances. Outside, if you had workers' comp through Builders Mutual, I'd probably just stay there. But everywhere else, I get in the habit of shopping it every year.
Do you guys use like an online system for that, or do you use brokers, or where do you shop?
Yeah, I mean, here in the Charlotte market, we have so many different brokers. Usually I'm just spitting it out to the vast list of contacts that I have in the insurance business. I've never done it online. That might be a good place to look though.
I'm a relationship guy, so I typically shop it between all of the agents I know personally. The reason I do that is because when I have a problem, I want somebody's office I can walk in and a desk I can pound on, you know what I mean? Versus calling a 1-800 number. That's me. So.
Yeah, kind of what I was saying earlier too is that I do think generally, yes, they're increasing every year, but also in particular this last year between a couple of kind of combining events, not just the lapse of government subsidies, but also the claims and some of the bigger companies had to pay out either through litigation or through natural disasters last year did make the market, as Johnny was saying, a lot more competitive. So there will be a rise for pretty much most people. If not all business insurances through health insurance, workers' comp, general liability insurance, all of those costs are increasing because a lot of the major insurance companies are, like Johnny said, taking a different approach to lessen their exposure, particularly from last year to this year. It's worth looking into just for knowledge sake, but I think that is generally true for most of our people right now. But again, shop around. That advice is still always true. Shop around for who's going to give you the best rate. Make sure you're not just taking the first option, but also as the rate changes, price for it and keep your keep your overhead costs known and percentage wise figured out for the annual. You can project it as much as you need to. But you could also do it based off of last year's numbers and get a general idea with the changed cost in there and then price the difference. Mr. Ty, did you have or Danny on this topic? If not, I'll go back to Daniel for the next question.
Well, insurance topic, yeah. Private
Yeah, go ahead.
healthcare insurance. My healthcare insurance went from $891 a month to $2,640 a month.
Yeah.
With Blue Cross Blue Shield, and it's kind of funny because I literally just got my new Blue Cross Blue Shield card that literally is blank because I don't have insurance anymore. So anybody who has any crazy, wonderful ideas, and that's why my arm's in a sling, because on the 30th I had shoulder surgery and I got my deductible out of the way. But if anybody has any healthcare insurance stuff as private business owners, love to hear about it or see it in the chat, to take it offline. But yeah, it went to higher than my house payment in 1 month. So
Ugh,
Yeah.
ugh, insurance.
Yeah.
Mine did that. Mine did the same thing. I ended up going to a healthcare insurance pool. For me, it's Christian Healthcare Ministries, but there's several of them out there. And the plan that I've got will go up to $1 million of cap on medical insurance, and it cut my rates back down. I went from, my wife and I were like $350 a month for the two of us, and it went to $1,400 and something a month. And I was like, okay, I'm out. So I went to a pool. We've had it for a couple of years now, and they've paid claims really well. So
Nice.
Great advice.
Scott, do you carry like a catastrophic policy along with that?
well, for me, that is kind of the catastrophic. It'll do $1 million. It's got $1 million cap. I'm hoping I don't have any medical issues that exceed $1 million. It has a $1,500 a year deductible that is due up front, and I think our rates are $580 a month. I think is what we pay for my wife and I. And she had to go in for something. It was about a $20,000 surgery, and then there was a complication, so she ended up in the hospital, and they covered it all. It's just they don't pay like insurance. You got to pay it up front, and then they reimburse you within 120 days. It's a little bit different, but for me, that's my catastrophic, because again, it covers up to $1 million. And even when I was in a head-on collision with a semi, those bills only added up to about $350,000. So this would have covered all of it that I had at that time.
Okay. Daniel, I see your hand up. If you want to unmute, tell us what's on your mind.
What's up, guys? Kind of lots of eye-opening stuff. I guess small wins. Maybe they're not so small for a small business owner, but I got all my client lists put together. Got the profit and loss. That was a little frustrating.
You'll probably see some head nods with that. I think there's a lot of people on the
Yeah.
call that feel that way.
I mean, last year I've really built a good, very good team, and there's been a lot of education. We did our first pool, and so I knew that there was going to be an education factor in there. And we did a lot of work at my house, and so I think we're probably at about 18%, with some of the things added back in, some of the education and whatnot. But the other thing I wanted to mention, I just kind of an ask, and I just because you told me to ask, but I've got 2 or 3 1-star reviews on my Google that came after I did a concrete paver job where Charlie Kirk had been murdered. I got a ton of people just going crazy on me and writing fake reviews. So I don't know if any of you guys would be willing, but Hardscape Utah,
I'll
we've got
put
a
the link
couple of
to your GMB in the chat.
yeah. There's just 2. We got a whole bunch removed. We got probably a dozen. It was a hell of a fight trying to get it, clean that up. But There's a couple that still are hanging on for some reason. But that's my win and my ask.
Yeah. Yeah, I
If
appreciate.
you have somebody tag on to the dispute, there's about a 90.
We've disputed it. I've disputed it a dozen times, and we've had people do it, but for whatever reason, I don't know if not enough people have done it or what, but
Sometimes
come
it just takes time. Sometimes they'll, it just doesn't hurt to continue to try and to continue to have more people do it. So Daniel, we hate that for you. I think every person here has gotten a fake negative review at some point, and it is so dang frustrating. And so I just put a link in the chat here. If anybody doesn't know how to dispute a review, you can do this to any reviews. It's never a guarantee that it's going to get removed, but I'll share my screen here. All you'll do, let's see, is it showing? Bryce, is my screen showing?
It is not.
It is now. Okay. So you'll go to the reviews. You'll click on the three little dots beside the review that you're wanting to report, and you'll click report review, and you'll just let Google know why. And you can do that as many times as you want, and anybody can do that. I will say in my 7 years at Redmond Growth, I see more reviews getting removed than I ever have. And that's plus it seems like Google's kind of taken those a little bit more seriously than they have in the past. So if you have any fake ones, I would not hesitate to try. It's definitely not going to hurt anything. And Daniel, we're so excited to have you here. Danny, I see your hand up. What question do you have today?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So my business partner, Drew, and I were general contractors, and I wanted to shift the conversation a little. I wanted to talk about change orders. So especially
Great
on the remodeling jobs. So we typically show the client what's going on with the situation, tell them why it's a change order. We let them know the price. And I would say about more than half the time it goes well and we keep going. But I think it's easy when the clients are understanding. They say, okay, I see your point, add it on to the next bill, let's keep going. But there's also a good amount of clients that go, well, let me discuss it with my husband or my wife. Let's just wait until X, Y, and Z is done first. So I'd like to hear from everyone else kind of how they present change orders to their clients. Typically, I know that you can present it in a way where we say, okay, well, this needs to be addressed first. We have to stop work in the meantime until it's addressed. So, I mean, are you actually shifting around your workers to other work sites, or are you saying to your workers, sorry, there's no work for the rest of the week or until they make a decision? Because that doesn't sound right to me either. So I'd love to hear how everyone goes about the situation.
Danny, I have a quick question. So these change orders, are these change orders that are because of a change the client has made, or are these change orders that are being made because of something that has happened on the project kind of unexpectedly?
I think both. I think let's just say you open up a wall and all the insulation's wet and the studs are rotted out, or if they made a change because now they want a new vanity and we need to put in a support board to support the floating vanity or something like that. So to answer your question, both situations we've run into difficult clients, or maybe we're just not presenting it the right way.
Danny, something that we did, I created, it's like a third grade level form that I put with every estimate we're doing now. And it explains what an estimate is. It literally has the Webster's definition. And then we talk about a blind estimate, a rough estimate, and a final estimate. And then we put down at the very bottom, estimates or best guesses about the work needs to be done. We can't see through floors and walls. I make the clients actually sign off on this document with our contract now, because we get the same thing. You know, people assume an estimate is a quote or a bid, which means that is the price. But with this, I go over it with them so that they understand. And I've heard people here at Redmond say that, hey, they charge a change order fee. Because we're cost plus, I tell people too, when I present that form, I said, if there is a change order, we don't charge any extra fee because you're paying cost plus. And so, you know, it'll just be whatever the change order is needs to be done. But I explain it up front, make them sign off on what I call an idiot proof form. And we haven't had any issues in the last 6 months that we've been using them.
We do, in our contract, we do have a change order clause that says they get a certain number of change orders for free. And then after so many change orders, we charge for the change orders. We've never had to charge anybody for a change order, but we do point that out just so we don't get the client who's constantly getting us to price check this change or that change. And we explain that to them, like, you know, after I think it's 4 or 5, we're going to start charging you for our time to compile these change orders if you're not, you know, executing the change order, just to keep people from having us doing all that change order work, pricing this, pricing that. That's always been pretty effective.
And that's how we recommend using the change order fee as well, Johnny, is it's to prevent the client from constantly changing their mind and constantly adding. You know, we might not charge them the first time for that change order fee, but we do make them aware before we start the job, and it's to try to prevent the constant adding this, changing this. We want to try to get all that out in the front end. And what I'll also say, Danny, is the only time that I have clients stopping work because somebody's not signing off for a change order is if we cannot continue the job until that change order is addressed. You know, I never want you in this situation is where they're not signing off on it. You continue to do the work. Now you're out material labors, and then they tell you they're not going to pay it because they never signed off. You know, if there's something else that we can go work on the project while they're thinking about that change, that's totally fine. They've already agreed upon that work.
2 things I want to. Oh, sorry, Ty.
No,
You can go ahead,
I would
sir.
say there's 2 different change orders. There's a change order out of necessity and there's a change order out of request. A change
Yes.
order out of necessity is never going to be a fee. That's something that you didn't know, they didn't know. And if you explain that to them up front, and also I am huge on, I want to be the first one that makes a great gesture. Okay. I am always want to be the first one that makes the great gesture. And my great gesture is always going through it when we start the project of, hey, when we expose these walls, we're in the middle of a complete remodel, studs out. We've already found $12,000 worth of slab issue that was repaired and about $14,000 worth of termite damage. And all of it, when you get to that point, you're also in, and of course they're all on the fly. When you're at that point, it's, hey, Mr. Rush, we're just going to need your sign off on this. We found the expense. This is what it is. It's kind of a non-negotiable, but it's if you're billing at the same rate that you were before, and it's a stop work, stop gap, just like we were looking at rain coming in the back of the house, got to be done. But the biggest thing is the set of the expectations and just be able to say, you do, and sometimes walking them through a project and going, hey, do you know what those studs look like behind this wall? And they go, well, of course not. And you're like, yeah, we don't either. So if we expose them and there's some damage and it needs to be taken care of, that's something we'll address at the time. And by the way, I know you saw that we have a change order fee. There will be no change order fees at all when it comes to a necessity for us to move forward. But remember, we're priced out because that we gave you a time frame of how we were going to build, and that's how we've bid our time. So these things have to be done as soon as possible. So when we find them, we'll get pricing as soon as possible, but we also have to get signed off and move forward as soon as possible to keep ourselves in budget that you and I agreed to.
Right. You're never eating those costs, Ty, when something is unforeseen. It changes the price and timeline.
Yep. I think 2 things I want to clarify too with what Johnny said when he said these change orders are included or free. He's talking about the creation of the change order, not the change order cost itself. Those, and Johnny, correct me if I'm wrong, but those are always included. You charge for the difference of the work that you're doing no matter what. But what Ty said is absolutely true with the necessity ones versus the kind of selective ones. Yeah, requested ones. But yeah, you're not going to punish or penalize a client for something that neither of you could have known or foreseen. But what we do is on our change order policy, you have to include the price difference of what the change is going to be, and you still price it the same as you do any other job, right? Include your margins on there, make sure that your overhead is covered. So have that price difference, but also have a space for you to include the timeline change so that people are agreeing and acknowledging that part as well. And as Nicole said as well, and this is true at any point in the project, whether there's a change order or not, we have to stop work if payment lapses. And it all comes back to setting expectations on the front end. If you tell people this is how it works and this is why, before there's ever an issue, when the issue comes up, it's referring back to that conversation, and you're not just relying on how good you can communicate in that very heated and emotionally involved moment. You're able to point back to, hey, we talked about this at the beginning. This is that situation coming up. You know, we don't want these things to happen. However, we found ourselves in one. So this is what we're going to do, and this is how we address it. It's not crazy. It's not like it never happens. That's why we talked about it before we even started, to let you know that this could be a thing. But setting expectations up front, charging for the difference of the work at minimum. And then if you have that change order fee itself, to be able to consolidate the changes that a person may want to selectively make, that will help you as well, and include the difference in the timeline as well in that conversation so that they know and aren't surprised or have any sort of ground to stand on to be frustrated with you for that.
You know, one last thing I'll add to that too, that allowed us to reduce the number of change orders, is we started spending a lot more time in pre-construction, speccing out the entire build and making sure that we had actual numbers from subcontractors and vendors, selections from the homeowners, everything that we needed before construction started, all lined out, organized, selected by the homeowner. And that helped reduce, before we ever start construction, and that helped reduce the number of change orders over time as well.
Something I feel important to mention as well, I know I said my piece, but consider also the reality if you're eating costs on a project for somebody and the value of it, you wouldn't necessarily take on a $6,000 hit or just gift your best friend even $6,000 on a project. But you're doing that for a total random stranger that is contracted to do something else, right? They've told you what they wanted to do. They're getting a project done on their house. If you wouldn't do it for your best friend, which in most cases you probably wouldn't, don't do that for random strangers that are supposed to be paying for the service that is being done anyways. Too many business owners want to do that and never tack on the difference of that change order on your last payment. Don't just say we'll settle up at the end, because there's a high chance that either won't happen or it's going to be just this difficult issue you have to work through. Change orders are collected when change orders are approved. Mr. Russell.
Yeah, I would say that's something that we definitely struggle with. And I think the part that Danny said that really stuck out to me as being difficult is, what do you do with your guys? So like a change orders come up, okay, now you stop work. Now, like, you know, like, do you just tell that guys to go home for the day? I mean, I when Danny said that, it really struck a bell, because that's, I think, the toughest part for it. Like, if there's other stuff you can do, and hey, you know, once this change order is settled, we'll work on that part. But in the meantime, you know, we'll continue on with the original scope of the work. But sometimes it's like a hard stop on the whole project. So that right there, when he said that, I was like, yeah, I think that's why it's so difficult, because the guys are like, yeah, we'll just keep going. And yeah, we definitely something that we struggle with, Danny. So it's not just you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would throw in there, Jordan, part of the difficulty with that is, even if you don't have work, you do need to stop on that project, because if work continues, there's no reason necessarily for the customer to have the same urgency that you do to resolve the issue. Even if you just have your guys, hey, take a quick, you know, early lunch, go off site for a little bit. That way the customer also sees and feels the reality of the work has to stop because we've got this issue or thing that needs to be resolved. So that urgency continues. If the person still gets what they want, ultimately at the end of the day, their project continues moving forward with no issue, but they've raised an issue, there's no real urgency communicated there. It is tough, and you don't want to send your guys out if there's nothing that they can do. And that is a good mentality from your team to want to continue to make progress. However, you're shooting yourself in the foot by not stopping work. You don't know what the result of the circumstances are.
Bryce, I want to be careful about saying that, because there's probably a lot of things in most of these situations that your team can continue working on that are going to need to be done anyways, regardless of whether or not the change order's approved, you know? And so if there are things within the current scope that the change order will not affect, that your team could continue working on, you know, let's say that you just start a project, you're in like a demo phase, right? And then the homeowner is like, well, we want to add this, which would require a change order. Well, chances are, you know, if you have a couple of days of demo left or whatever, you could have your team continue working on demo, but to still set that expectation that up to a certain point, we cannot continue working on this project until this is either approved, where we change the scope, or we're not approved and we just continue doing what we're working, to create that same sense of urgency that Bryce is talking about. You know, if the scope of work request or the change order request, if that's going to completely change the direction that the team is working in at that time, right? Like if that needs to be approved to determine what we're going to do right now immediately, then yes, you know, everything that Bryce is saying is correct. But from more of like a functionality kind of practical lens, right? There's typically probably other aspects of a project the team can continue working on until that change order is resolved, so long as it's actually handled with a sense of urgency to some degree. And you are going to have to create that urgency, most likely. You're going to have to be the one, typically, who's following up with the customer, making sure everything's approved, making sure it's signed quickly in order for that to happen. And Danny, I think a lot of what's been shared here is spot on. I think the biggest question is just really simply like, what is your change order process right now?
You're asking me personally, or was that a general statement?
Yeah, I'm asking you what your change order process is right now.
It's typically, I mean, I feel like we're too nice. I think we present it. They say, I mean, there's a lot of different things different clients can say, but we give the price. We say there's other things we can work on, so we'll work on that in the meantime. And sometimes we just never get a decision and we keep pressing it, and then they'll come and they'll say, well, it seems kind of high on the price. I'm thinking specifically on one of our commercial remodel sites right now. And you know, we're just continuing with the original contract, but we never really get an answer on the change order. And so I think when you're saying create urgency, I think that's a big point.
Yeah. And also, if you could get the idea of like nice or mean, like I'm being too nice, or I'm being too strict, or I'm being too mean. Like if you can get those concepts, just like dump them, just like get those out of your head. Those aren't serving you. You're not mean if you're following a process. That's not mean. You're not mean if you're asking for payment of what's owed to you, right? You're not mean if someone is asking you to change something that was a part of the original plan, and then you say, here's the process we must take from here, and here's the deadline by which I need you to answer me by. None of those things are mean. These are just processes that will cause the customer at the end of the day to be happier, because it will allow you to operate the project more smoothly. The customer will be completely knowledgeable on any additional costs. You're going to be giving them more options, right? Like there's all these benefits that's actually to the homeowner by following the process. And so like, if you can just commit, like the idea of hey, I think we're being too nice. Like, I get what you mean by that. I truly do. But if you can get that out of your head, like, it's not about being nice or mean. It's just about like running a business and how to run a business. You know what I mean? And the way that that's done is through process. And what I'd suggest is making sure that in your contract or billing agreement or whatever you use, there's a clause that says change orders. And in that clause, you say how the change order process works. And then before you sign up a customer and actually start work, you actually take a time, like set a meeting before the construction process to review that contract with them, to make sure that they understand how things work. And so long as you do that, you're never going to run into issues. No one's going to ever think that you're mean or whatever. But it's about having a process, right, first. And a process is just steps that are actually written down somewhere, right? It's not, here's what we typically do. It's, let's write it down. So let's write down what that process is. Let's put a clause in our agreement. Make sure you review that before the customer, before you start the project, or with the customer before you start the project. Then all you need to do from there is follow it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. It's much emotionally, it may feel like you're being mean or whatever, but I promise you, no one's thinking that. The customer is only thinking according to the expectations that you set with them. They have no idea how the construction process works. You're in, especially with residential customers. You get to dictate the terms as long as those terms are reasonable and are set up front. Payment terms, billing terms, change order terms, however you do things. You can set whatever terms you want as long as those are reasonable, right? Fair. And those expectations are set up front. And that's how you avoid construction problems down the road. You got to mentally commit to not losing money. Like this is a business, right? You can't just eat those costs. You got to care more about following a process. And if you do that, the customer is going to be happier. You're going to make more money. You're going to be able to take care of your team, your family, everything.
And ultimately, your customer's a better result in that same vein too. It's just managing
That's
it with professionalism and from a business standpoint. And if you keep it in that realm of professionalism, it has less chance of falling into the emotional deal. This is just how we manage business, and we set up the expectation beforehand.
Hey, I see Dan Lewis still has his hand raised. I'll stay on this call a little bit after time because we're just over time here to Dan answer your question and make sure it's answered. But for the rest of us, let's go ahead and break it down. So if this is your first group call.
Making the announcement.
Oh, thank you, Bryce. Thank you very much. Yep. Okay, so we got together as a team and we decided how we're just always looking to find ways to bring more value to you guys and do cooler stuff and make the stuff that we share and make these calls more engaging, more beneficial, more helpful. And so something that we're going to try this year is we're going to try doing like a monthly workshop where we use one of the Thursday group coaching call times. It will probably, we're still talking about whether or not we want to set an official date where it's going to be like the same day every month. We're still kind of working through that, but it will likely be towards the end of every month in the third or fourth week where we will be either presenting on a topic, like we'll be actually doing like a talk on a topic, or we'll be bringing someone in to do a talk on a topic. So this month, it's actually in 2 Thursdays from now. So not next Thursday, but the Thursday after. We're actually bringing in a guy named Paul Sanneman. Paul was actually introduced to me by a Redmond Growth client, and Paul runs one of the biggest staffing companies for construction in the United States that's out there. They've made thousands and thousands of placements successfully. And he's going to be talking about how to hire, train, and develop people in our market in this day and age, right? This is kind of like the cliffhanger that I want to leave you with to make it interesting. He really doesn't believe there are such things as like labor shortages in construction. Like he doesn't think that you can't find good people. That's something that we hear a lot. Like you just can't find good people. And he's of the mentality. It's like, no, you absolutely can find good people no matter where you're at. It's just having the right process. So he's going to be talking about that process. And again, that's Thursday, January 29th. We're going to be doing a workshop with Paul Sandman, where he's going to be talking about how to, find great people in construction in this day and age. So stay tuned. We'll have more information, more announcements coming to you shortly. But if this is your first group call, we like to end with energy. And so what we do is we count down. I have everyone unmute your mics, so you can start unmuting your mics now. You can start unmuting your mics now. Seeing microphones start to unmute. And we count down 3, 2, 1. After I say 1, we all together say the word growth, like we're breaking down a football huddle, right? That's what we're doing. We're breaking down the football huddle. Okay. So 3, 2, 1, I'm going to say growth. We're all going to say growth, right? On the count of 3, 3, 2, 1, we're going to say growth. So 3, 2, 1, growth. There we go. Oh man, Damon Hobbs coming in. Jeff Stewart coming in with the energy. These guys, I'm relying on these guys to bring the energy. Thank you.